So we're very happy to have you here today with us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
And would like you to talk to us about your recent hard personal story that
you want to start on an easy one,
I want to start on the easy one, yes. It's
okay.
like hard talk here.
Well, I've been in Greece 7 years. In that time, I set up 53 businesses. I have 3 beautiful children, but in January this year, I was told I have 26 tumors in my neck that will go cancerous, and they have to be removed. And in removing them, 80% chance of being paralyzed for life. So anyway, that's the huge...
But anyway, you're here, and this happened
I'm here,
a few
and
weeks
thank
ago.
you, because as I was
we're
in my...
very grateful for him to be here today. So this happened just 3 weeks ago. And he's here, and he's not paralyzed.
I wanted to say thank you, because knowing I would come here to speak with you was one of the things that dragged me out of the hospital bed and started working those muscles again. But if you don't understand something I say, it's because it's not because it doesn't make sense, it's because I'm slurring, I think. At least I hope that will be the case.
So
I will do my best.
But in the talks and the conversations we've been having together, there's something about this personal story that has happened to you recently that is also connected to your life in general and to entrepreneurship and being an investor.
I can liken it to that because it's what I call a journey with no obvious end. You don't know where you're going to end up. You know, will you die? Will you be paralyzed? Something in between? You'll be fine, as I am, thank God. Yeah, but it's a journey with no obvious end. And when you have that kind of journey, that for me is very much like the journey of an entrepreneur. That's what they face, a journey with no obvious end. Or at least that's what they should try to face. It's better to not put a goal there, but just accept the journey that you will take and let the end emerge through your actions. Yeah? And when you're faced with such a dilemma, reasoning, rational analysis can't really help you. Yeah? So you've got to use your intuition. It's really important. Yeah? So
you've used intuition.
Intuition is your gut. Of course, you look at as much practical stuff as you can. The art of reason is fine. Use it wisely, but balance deliberation and instinct. Yeah? And eventually you get there. And it's not about comparing options as well. Because if you reason too much, you get lost in the detail. You can get lost. What you're looking for is the essence of a problem. The essence of this problem had nothing to do with the skill of a surgeon's hand or the technology. It had to do with finding a place where I knew my spirit would soar as I'm transformed, because that's what was going to happen to me. So that's the point there. And the life of an entrepreneur is like that. In other words, reasoning can take you only so far. Mm-hmm. Yeah? But it's your character and your willingness to cultivate and allow intuition to be your guide, and your courage and faith. That's what will take you the rest of the way. There's too many unknowns.
So in the work that you have been doing as entrepreneur and investor, intuition has been leading
It's right at the forefront. You see, you have to master something really before you can let it go. And I think as an individual and as a civilization, I think we have mastered reason. So perhaps too much.
Behind.
So I think we need to let it go. And I don't mean let it go as ignore it. I mean use it wisely, but understand that it has a lot of flaws when it comes to judgment.
So intuition is one thing that has been guiding your life as an entrepreneur and an investor.
Absolutely.
But how about the part of how much is it about the I? How much about not this I, but I, me?
The I.
Yeah.
I think one of the fundamental misconceptions of our time is that we are not connected. We are absolutely connected. Every action we do ripples. Yeah. So for me, it is always about the collective, and at the heart of everything I do is a we. Yeah, for many reasons. My older brother is a musician. Yeah, mm-hmm. He has touched the lives of thousands, inspired as many more. He spent a lifetime doing what he loves, but he has no fame, no riches, but he is fulfilled. Yeah, his success is the unintended consequence of his inner self. Yeah, and that touches us, and that makes a difference, and that attitude ripples. It has an effect. It ripples across the world. Yeah, like I said, he has inspired thousands. By choosing something that it was more likely he wouldn't reap fame or fortune, but he understood how empty that was really in any case, as a pursuit.
How does this idea of we as a team affect you in your business? You know, in your business partners, in your relationships with the people you work with, and what do you have to say to, you know, people who are, we've got loads of people young in the audience with loads of amazing ideas. Others want to have their own startups. Others could be investors, you know, and we really do live in a society that we foster I and me. How does this have to do with we? Because we've talked about that so much.
There are so many ways to answer that question. On a personal level, if I can't see a we, I won't cross that bridge. Yeah, for me, it's essential. Okay, but if you want to couch it in more practical terms, in many businesses you have an entrepreneur and investor. Yeah, and I started out life being an entrepreneur, and I became an investor. And what I did was to try and link those two, create a bridge to share the pain and jubilation of both sides, and never lose sight of the other side. Because if the investor is not engaged in the business, he or she can harm the business. And it's very important. And I believe that it is investors more than entrepreneurs that can create the change that we seek. Investors more than entrepreneurs, more than governments can sow the seed of change. Yeah? They're the ones that can breathe life into businesses, into the entrepreneurial spirit. For me, it's a lack of investor courage, not a shortage of entrepreneurial zeal that is our problem. Yeah? It's investors that can be that estuary for the imaginations of the entrepreneurs to flow into.
Do you also see a lack of faith between investors and people? How do you experience this in the world of business?
I think lack of faith and fear are huge problems. And to borrow something from what Cassandra said about indifference, that's also huge. Indifference. Yeah? And indifference is almost close to lack of courage. Yeah, they're very close. And the thing is that who really controls the world at the end of the day? We've built a society around the concept of money. But money isn't really the all-embracing, all-pervasive fuel of our civilization. We built it so it's like that, but really we have to acknowledge the primacy of ideas. Yeah? Because without an idea, money is stagnant as a pool of water. Yeah? And ideas need money, but money needs ideas. You know, it's hardly ever that you have a conversation if you're an entrepreneur and investor. It's the investor always goes, oh, look, I'm going to give you, should we give him my money? It's never the entrepreneur, should we give him our idea? Because it's always on the back foot. It's always the entrepreneur looking for the investor. We have to balance that, yeah, because that sets the tone of the relationship. Because if each respect each other, then you engage, yeah, and that's the ammunition to engage and face the challenges ahead. It's really important. Yeah. It's important that you seek out the edge. Yeah, that you extend, you look for your discomfort zone, not your comfort zone.
So have you been looking for your discomfort zone during
Only.
your 53?
Every time, only. That's why this happened.
Right.
You know, I'm always looking for that, looking for the tough and uncertain road. Yeah, because what happens there is that as you travel to the edge of existence, and at the edge, yeah, that's where you find a world rich in the fabric of life. And that's the most fertile ground for cultivating intuition. And that's an incredible resource because reason has so many flaws. Yeah? Reasoning, your ideas are colored by your perceptions, your beliefs, your prejudices. Yeah? As Philippa, that's it, I'm sorry. She was talking about how media can, intentionally warp your thinking. Yep. Well, we kind of do that on our own as well through our prejudices, and then we use that in a reasoned debate. Like in the lady that asked about Greece and Europe. Yeah. Yeah. What's the issue? We're going back and forth, and they're fighting it with this impeccable logic. They're thinking they're using the art of reason. But they're not, because they're missing the essence of the problem. And the essence of that problem, which again the lady pointed out, was that a house divided against itself cannot stand. That's the problem in Europe. That's the problem that we face. We need to solve that problem.
So we're not emphasizing we enough.
And we're not going to the essence of a problem. We're getting too caught up in the art of reasoning. And it's flawed.
So we've been talking about several ideas that you've been, working on, and I'm sure that we have members of our audience that, they've read books on entrepreneurship and being an investors, and so many nice things in all these books and interesting things. But what would be your kind of most important tips? What would be your words of wisdom for the entrepreneurs and the young people in our audience and in the live stream right now? What would be your essence?
My essence.
Yeah.
Well, as far as the books go, they are great, but I think everyone will agree. If you read a book, you kind of look at it and nod and go, it's kind of interesting, but it's very hard to apply that. One of the things that gets me going is the expression, you cannot wait for the storm to pass. It is better to learn to dance in the rain.
So you've been dancing in the rain?
All the time.
So you've been
every
really,
time.
Right, okay.
Yeah, because there are no perfect conditions, right? Okay. You cannot wait for them. Right? So what if it's raining? Let it rain, let it thunder. Get out there. Unless you go, how will you ever know?
So your idea is like, as hard as something might seem, have your intuition first and dive in the problem. That's ideal,
I think you have to stretch your level of comfort. Yeah. That's what you have to do, because that's where you learn. When you go to the edge of something, for me, what I coin it as collecting wisdom. That's where you collect wisdom. Yeah. And that's the thing that you use. Because if you never stretch the boundaries of what you can do, you're never really learning. But by going to the edge, by seeking out the edge of every territory, you will collect wisdom, and you will use that. Yeah? An analogy is like Formula One racing. They go to the edge of that, and then they learn things, and then they bring it back, and they incorporate it in the daily life of mass car manufacturing. It's the same with this. Go to the edge, and then take some of the wisdom you've learned and incorporate it in every day. I'm not suggesting everybody lives how I've lived. It's too intense, but you can use a lot of it.
And we've been talking about the gates to a new world. What's this idea that you've been saying about entrepreneurs?
The gates to a new world.
We've talked about that. It's also the same thing of the notion of you're having your intuition guide you through most of your choices in all the entrepreneurial work that you've been doing. It's hard for someone to grasp, because we have so much ideas on logic, on money, and putting everything down. And here you are talking about intuition and about, the we and about gates, and it's kind of...
Well, the intuition is another way of arriving at judgment and decision-making. But the gates to the new world idea is, well, what I've seen is that most people turn away at the gates to a new world. And for me, that's one of the great tragedies of investment. And I'm talking about entrepreneurs.
Something that would be life-changing, for instance, right?
I'm talking about you're doing something, and you're standing there at a crossroads, and you look behind, and you see the long road paved with all you've endured. You see everything that you've done has been in vain. You feel despair, right? And you want to turn away.
Yeah.
But you're actually at the gates to a new world. And if you had the courage to push through it, that's what you would find. But how do you know? Because what if it's just more of the same? So what you do is you have to have that leap of faith. You have to go through, and each time you go through, you collect a little more wisdom. So then it becomes inevitable that eventually you learn to recognize that place. Yeah? And you recognize that subtle feeling that you have when you are indeed at the gates to a new world, so that then you know whether to push through or whether to throw in the towel. But because people don't do that, they most often turn away, and it's a tragedy because you were nearly there.
Right. Do you see the same problem in investors? Or are there some, tips?
Absolutely. That's for both sides of the equation.
Right.
The investors give in. The investors call it throwing good money after bad.
Right.
And the entrepreneurs call it, I've had enough.
Right.
What
do you think about investors in Greece in general? Is there, some tips? Because we've been reading about that as well. Do you find, or investors around the world, do you feel that there is a gap? Do you feel that, they have been fulfilling their role as they should be doing?
No, absolutely not.
Well, yes, that's what we were expecting.
No, I think they are riddled with unnecessary fear. I think the problem, like I said, is one of lack of investor courage. They're the ones who could make the difference. Our society is built on a certain premise, and money is elevated. And it's supposed to be our fuel, but then it's not really, because they're not using it. It's like having a fleet of cars and saying, well, okay, we've got petrol, but we won't fill that car up. Yeah. So I don't think they're fulfilling their obligations at all. I think not just courage, but you need more engagement. Investing is much more than a bank transfer. You have to invest your life as well as your funds
And you also
into
need
other
more
people.
gratitude, I guess, for everything that has happened in your life.
I think if you're talking about gratitude, gratitude and humility for me are the cornerstones. Yeah? If you want to climb, for example, to the top of Mount Everest, right, there is no technology in the world that can get you there. You have to quite literally walk there yourself. Yeah? It goes without saying that you have to be impeccable in every way. You have to be brilliant, ingenious. Yeah? Your courage and desire is monumental as the mountain, but whether you get there or not is not up to you. The mountain decides. Anything can happen.
So the mountain decides. What do you think the mountain will decide for Greece? What do you think the situation? You've been doing all this business, and you've been thriving. You live in Athens. You're doing well. What do you think is our problem, really? Because we've got investors and entrepreneurs in Greece as well. As my last question, what's our problem?
My opinion on Greece is I've got a few things to say. One is that rhetoric is completely wrong. And this goes back again to what Philip was saying about the media. The rhetoric is wrong. We shouldn't be talking about a nation confined to a continuous struggle or a nation that is, corrupt and self-serving and tax evasion. We should be talking about saying things like, we stand at the edge of history. We could be the cradle of the new civilization. We must take total responsibility. That concept on its own. Who cares who's to blame? Germany to blame, the rest of the world, subprime crisis. A lot of people always want to throw the blame there. Okay, it's interesting to know the roots of a crisis, but since no one else is changing, what are we left with? Ourselves. We should take the responsibility in our own hands as a country, completely, and the investors should play a massive role in that, massive, because they have the money, which means they have the power. Yeah? If you change the way you see things, like risk-reward, for example, this is one of the big problems with investors. They see risk and reward very one-dimensionally, right? And of course you have to examine the risks. But on the reward side, they put internal rate of return, return on equity, stuff like that. For me, I throw that out. For me, I see it completely differently. Yeah? On the risk side, of course there's risk. But for me, love, will, and imagination kicks in. So if I love something, if I have passion about something, if I want to change it, if I want to create good, that changes the face of risk. If I have will, if I have strength, courage, that transforms the shape of risk. If I have imagination, creativity, that can make a mockery of risk. Yeah? So that changes that side. And on the reward side, it's not how much money you can make. It needs to make money to sustain the dream. Of course, the dream can't live without being sustained. But beyond that, things like enabling others, exploring new territories, meeting new people, the cascade of events that could follow. Who knows what could happen? Yeah. We need to change that. And if you change the way you see things, that changes what you will say yes to. And what you say yes to can change the world. So it's very important for investors to rethink the way they look at risk and reward and to ask, why are they so afraid to experiment, to explore, to go to that edge? What is the worst that can happen? You lose a bit. Because when we're talking about investors, we assume we're talking about people that have the funds.
I understand. So rethink. So ladies and gentlemen, Nikkos Frangos, we're really happy that you were here. You're crowned. Thank you. I want a hug on stage.